co-sponsors of this event in welcoming you all. And for me, it is a great pleasure to moderate what I hope will be a very interesting side event on the importance of agricultural cooperatives and what they mean for food security. The International Year of Cooperatives represents an excellent opportunity to emphasize the vital role played by agricultural cooperatives in sustainable employment generation, poverty alleviation, and food security worldwide. Before turning to our distinguished panel members, let me share with you a little bit of information about my own country, Zambia, where the cooperative movement is quite strong, and the numbers prove it. There are 15,929 registered cooperatives that form a 4-tier system, namely small primary cooperatives, district cooperatives, provincial cooperative unions, and national cooperative federations. The majority of the cooperatives are primary cooperatives, mainly composed of agricultural-oriented small-scale farmers. The other types of cooperatives include savings and credits cooperatives, and an increasing number of cooperatives have been registered in several subsectors such as fisheries, livestock, arts, and tourism. Some of the primary cooperatives have united to form 65 district cooperative unions, and they have affiliation with 9 provincial cooperative unions. The fourth level is the Zambia Cooperative Federation, which is the national cooperative federation where all the provincial unions are affiliated. Cooperatives in Zambia are identified as a strategic avenue through which socio-economic development can be accelerated and poverty reduction achieved. Thus, by putting in place a framework for the promotion and development of cooperatives, Zambia is contributing to the attainment of the Millennium Development Goals. I also used my discretion to extend an invitation to a colleague, His Excellency Brian Baula, the permanent representative of Malawi, because I know that Malawi has done extremely well in agriculture, and I hope he will find this event interesting. This side event represents an opportunity to share experiences and success stories on successful agricultural cooperative models and innovative institutional arrangements from around the world. We have a multi-stakeholder panel which includes farmer leaders and cooperative representatives from developed and developing countries, one representative from the research community, and government representatives. Before I introduce the panel, Eve Crowley, Deputy Director of the Gender, Equity and Rural Employment Division of FAO, will set the stage and provide background on agricultural cooperatives. She will also introduce the thematic areas which each panelist will address. Eve, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Welcome to everyone. And today's event really is focusing on agricultural cooperatives and how they contribute to food security. I originally had a PowerPoint presentation, and unfortunately for technical reasons, I'm unable to show it. So I wanted to show you some interesting images. If that arrives, that will be shown on the screen later. In the meantime, I'd like to take advantage of our scarce time. My first point is to say that agricultural cooperatives are a mainstream phenomenon. They're extremely important. Cooperatives worldwide, we've heard some of the figures. The 300 largest cooperatives alone have an annual turnover of over $1 trillion. That's the equivalent of 1/10 of the GDP of the United States. That's huge. Cooperatives worldwide have 1 billion members. They create 100,000 jobs. 100 million jobs. So there are lots of zeros there, and those numbers may be difficult for people to grasp. But if we translate it into GDP terms, that's 3 to 10% of national GDPs. And agricultural cooperatives alone make up 50% of the global agricultural output of the world. Of the 300 largest cooperatives in the world, 30% of them, a third, are in the agriculture and food sector. So these are major organizations. In Europe, the aggregate market share of agricultural cooperatives is 60% in processing and marketing of agricultural commodities, 50% in input supply. In India, if we just look at dairy cooperatives, just dairy, 100,000 dairy cooperatives collect 16.5 million liters of milk from 12 million farmers every single day. Now that is organization. In Brazil, agricultural cooperatives count nearly 1 million members. They earn $3.6 billion in export earnings in 2009, and they were responsible for 37.2% of agricultural GDP. So again, major things. Now, when we're talking about cooperatives, these are autonomous associations. They're voluntarily united. They're aimed towards fulfilling their members' needs. They're jointly owned. They're democratically run. Basically, what we're talking about is a business model with a conscience. It's defined by the values that they espouse, which is a combination of economic goals and social goals. We've heard about that this morning. But there's another element of this, and that's that agricultural cooperatives actually have a critical contribution to make in sectors of the economy and in places, geographical places, where other parts of the business world may not actually have a financial interest. Why are they so important? Over the last 3 decades, there has been a massive transformation of the institutional landscape in rural areas. Basically, public institutions in most parts of the developing world have withdrawn. So there's this big void. In some countries, you've got private sector organizations moving in, and some you've got civil society organizations. Well, cooperatives are an extremely important model in rural areas where there's an institutional vacuum. So that's one key function they play. Another key function is that they provide an important channel for investments. Over the last 30 years, there's been a massive decline of public agricultural expenditure since the 1980s. And yet, without reversing that trend, we will never reach the food security targets, reducing the number of hungry in the world. And this is particularly worrying because with the food crisis, we have seen that when food prices went up in 2007, 2008, the small farmers of the world were not able to respond to that market price increase. You know, it could have been an opportunity for small farmers, for poor people in developing countries to actually take advantage and make something out of high food prices. But unfortunately, it didn't work because the market mechanisms didn't work. The market information did not get to small farmers. It was mostly farmers in developing countries and in transition economies that were able to take advantage of food price spikes. Yet, the demands for food and feed and energy are increasing. And by the year 2050, we expect that we're going to need to increase agricultural production by 70% in order to feed the world in 2050. So it's absolutely essential to support the organizational capacities of farmers in order for them to be able to increase their production and to be able to respond more effectively to market signals. Small farmers make up half of all rural inhabitants. That's 1.5 billion people are in smallholder households, and they're contribution to national growth is significant. 40 to 60% of total rural income comes from small farmers. And we actually have people here today who are part of a campaign for family farmers in particular, and that is one dimension that is worth mentioning. Now, I had a very nice diagram for you, but unfortunately I'm not going to be able to show it. FAO, together with some of our sister agencies, the World Food Program and IFAD, undertook a review of good practices in institutional innovations in the world. We made a call from any source, and we came up with 35 good practices. And what's really important about these is that they've enabled us to come up with very specific models of things that work. And a huge number of these are actually cooperative examples. But there are also others that are more sort of farmers' organizational models and innovations that bring together finance and storage capacities and farmer organizations. But I'd like to share a few of the lessons from that study that we did. Basically, cooperatives are located in a diverse environment of institutions where, among other things, the very first step is creating groups, enabling individuals in rural areas who are fragmented and operate at a small scale to group together into an organization, into a farmers group. It seems like a very elemental thing. This is not yet a cooperative. It's sort of a pre-cooperative. But without the ability for farmers to group together and work together, they rarely are able to develop the confidence they need to pool their skills and knowledge and to develop the leadership, the practice in leadership that's required to be able to evolve into more complex cooperatives. Groups also make it easier for the public sector institutions and private enterprises to deliver services to farmers more effectively. So there's an external value in farmers organizing. In the next scale up is what we call bridging relations. Those are intergroup relations. So beyond the group, a small group of farmers, it's getting groups of farmers in different places to work together into federations and apex organizations. So these are higher scale organizations that, because of their number, are able to have an influence on assets, on market power, and on decisions. And from the outside, what is the value? The private sector finds federations of farmers much more interesting as partners. They're more reliable. They can provide a more regular quality and quantity of output, more timely output. So they're better and more reliable partners. And then beyond that, the other key element for cooperatives and for other farmers' organizations to be effective is to enable them to link with other types of organizations. It can be government organizations, it can be private sector, it can be charitable foundations or faith-based organizations, places that will give them access to the technology, the knowledge, it can be legal assistance, it can be funding at critical moments that will enable them to get to a completely different scale of international markets, types of technology that aren't available locally, levels of resources that they can't, and types of knowledge that they're unable to access. And this connection allows them to influence the rules of the game and to change the balance of power a little bit so that they're able to compete more effectively. This is where one begins to get influence on policies and actually changing the way that systems work. Now, cooperatives are one subset of all of this. What's special about cooperatives? I've said they combine the economic and the social values. And what was really interesting in the financial crisis, when we've looked around, many of the cooperative models have actually proven to be more resilient than non-cooperative models because they're not aimed entirely towards short-term gains. They're aimed also at responding to member interests, which are rarely of a short-term nature. They're longer-term. So they've proven, many of them have proven to be more resilient. And they have these values: self-responsibility, equity, solidarity, member control, concern for the community. So it's a business model with a conscience. My final point, we've all heard, if you give a fisherman a fish, they will eat today. If you teach a fisherman to fish, they will eat for a lifetime. But what the cooperative model shows us is that if you help a fisherman to organize into a cooperative, the fisherman will not only be able to feed herself and obtain the inputs and information and services needed to fish sustainably and market the fish safely, but that this then will not only enable them to eat today, but help them to feed their nations and improve their livelihoods, to actually move out of poverty. So it's the system around the fishermen that cooperatives help to create that are absolutely critical. The four themes that our speakers will be addressing are these, and these are kind of critical constraints that we see cooperatives enabling small farmers to overcome. And when I say farmers, I mean fishers and forest users, livestock users as well. So the first one is managing and accessing natural resources more effectively. So cooperatives, how do they do this? And you should listen to the speakers, and if they don't address this question, please ask, because this is one of the issues that we would like them to address. The second one is access to markets and productive assets. The third theme is accessing information, knowledge, skills, and research. And the fourth theme is influencing policies and systems. So those are the four themes for today. With this, I'll turn it over back to our chair, and we want this to be a chat show. We want it to be interesting. So while you're listening to our speakers, please come up with some provocative questions that you'd like to put, and we believe in honest discourse here. So we're looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eve. She has reminded us about the saying, the Chinese saying about fishing and teaching the fisherman or fisherwoman. What she forgot to say is that we need to update that and say, as long as we do not pollute the waters, because the fish must survive, first of all. It's my honor now to introduce our distinguished panelists, and I would like to inform all of you that we do have translation in French and from French to English. Unfortunately, that's the only translation we have. So our panelists can speak in French. Firstly, I have the pleasure of introducing Francois Traoré on my right, President of the Association of African Cotton Producers from Burkina Faso, and Mr. Christian Pace, who is Vice President, the European Agri-Cooperatives from Belgium. We have Mr. Claudio Barriga, Vice Chair, Global Forum on Agricultural Research from Chile. We have Yehua Lachet Ashanaki Agal, General Manager of Southern Regions Farmers Cooperative Federation in Ethiopia. I hope that all our panelists are here. And in the interest of time, I just would like to say to our panelists that I would greatly appreciate it if you can keep your presentations succinct and to the point, taking into account the theme that you have been assigned to address. And with this, let me yield the floor now to Mr. Traoré. You have the floor, sir.
Bonjour, je suis Traoré François, je suis...
Good afternoon. I'm Mr. Traoré Francois. I'm a producer from Burkina Faso. I'd like to thank the organizers for debating on this subtopic of agriculture and cooperatives. In Burkina Faso, we are almost 16 million people, and about 80 to 85% of the population is represented by farmers. I am a farmer. I have been so since 1969, and I started to do advocacy for cooperatives in 1980. So the situation in Burkina Faso is such. Socially speaking, Africans already live in cooperatives in their villages. This is a traditional way of doing. They will cultivate the fields together. You see them doing managing the markets together. So with the creation of cooperatives in the 1970s, agriculture was not only produced. We understood that we needed to improve our output. We need seeds, and that was the impetus for us to organize ourselves in cooperatives. Within the cooperatives, in the case of Burkina Faso, we decided to group people focusing on a certain type of production. It doesn't mean that a single person doesn't produce different things. I produce 5 different crops in my field. But we ask people to regroup themselves around a network so they have a good seed system, they have a very good adaptation system, and that they have a good marketing network. If you take the case of cotton, people, there are 15 to 50 people in a single cooperative, and cotton is really related to maize and cereals. When you cultivate cotton, the second year you cultivate cereals, and it works very well. So in Burkina Faso, the ones who are growers of cotton are the best growers of cereals as well. So through this cooperative system, we have access to credit. We have a kind of solidarity system because there's a problem of collateral with the banks, with the small producers. When I say small producers, it's 2 to 5 hectares of land. And at this point, the land doesn't belong to the people who grow it. So the only collateral system is for growers to get together and to manage the guarantees together and to exchange their experiences and to have a kind of self-management and control between themselves so that each person is a good manager of his own credit and can everybody gets together to sell the production, and it goes through the banks, and the bank then is in confidence and the financing then starts. That's how that was organized in our country. We also organize what I call the maize system channel, and through that system, the very same producer can be part of 2 federations. He can sell cotton in some place, and then he also produces maize, so he can sell that as well. And he can also be a cattle raiser. And what is very important, it allows the single producer to use the manure to fertilize his own field. So through this system today in Burkina Faso, we were able to realize that we cannot avoid working with cooperatives if we want to, because if we don't have access to seeds, to growing agricultural equipment, because young people then cannot grow, and if they don't have what they need, then they leave, and we don't wish to see that. You heard everywhere in Africa, the young people are moving out of Africa. We would like to work so that the cooperatives can allow people to be stabilized in their own countries. This example of Burkina Faso, we replicated it through the sub-region, whether it's in West Africa or Central Africa. We are part of an association of cotton producers of Africa so that we can share our experiences. What are the challenges? If you take the case of Burkina Faso, in the rural areas, about 70% people cannot read. So that is a problem. That is a challenge. A problem when it comes to training, the pathway toward understanding what the technicians or what the experts ask us to do. And it's also a problem when you share experiences, because if you have to move because you need a certain level of understanding in order to do that. So we use a system of communications, which is a kind of, we call that a fleet system. We use the mobile phones. You have a flat rate per person per month, very low, and it allows the producer to talk all day long. If you're part of that network, you can exchange and share experiences. That's a communication tool. The seed system, what did we do for the seeds? We chose the most performing producer. They have higher technical skills. They also have very good experience in understanding the seeds, and we are in touch with the research people. And so that's how we communicate with the people who do research. We say we want this species, which type of cross. We have a debate, and the research people do the research work. And once we obtain the seeds, then we replicate it through those producers, and then we redistribute it to other producers. Currently, the cooperatives occupy a very important place. What we try to do is to be listened, to be in the good ear of politicians. And there's you know how politicians work in Africa. There are several political parties. And once there is an electoral campaign, it has an influence on the rural organizations, on the cooperatives, and people who cannot read, they have trouble because they think, oh, this person who wants me to vote for him, he doesn't tie up to the cooperatives. What can you do for me? Sometimes there is a division among cooperatives when there are these electoral processes. So what I think myself, in 2012, for cooperatives, I think it's a very important year because I have been present in the cooperatives for over 30 years. Because agriculture in Africa has to go necessarily through cooperatives, because the producers, they demonstrated their capacities and their skills, but there are still constraints. And it is an opportunity for me to address all the partners in the UN to say that the road toward development, it's through cooperatives, it's through agriculture, to make sure that Africa will be able to feed, will need cooperatives. And that's my conviction as a producer, that Africa can feed itself through cooperatives and with the good ear of the politicians and the support of politicians and international organizations. And the exchange between cooperatives, between various nations, between Africa and Europe, I think the cooperatives should share things rather than having Africans moving to Europe. So I think it would be very important to share our resources. So I'd like to thank you, and I am available for any question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to give the next presenters about 10 minutes each, so we can have sufficient time for an interaction. And I therefore give the floor to Mr. Pace. You have the floor. 10 minutes, sir. Thank you.
Monsieur l'ambassadeur, mesdames et messieurs, je suis moi-même agriculteur en France et je suis président d'un groupe coopératif qui travaille avec un peu plus de 15 000 agriculteurs et qui développe des activités très variées, qui vont des activités de base, de collecte, d'approvisionnement, mais aussi à la transformation. Nous avons des plats cuisinés et j'ai aussi dans la coopérative une division de semences. Aujourd'hui, je suis le porte-parole des coopératives européennes, donc de la COGECA. Coopératives européennes, représentent 7 millions d'agriculteurs.
There are approximately 30,000 cooperatives in Europe. Kopak is the organization which represents the farmers themselves. European farmers, directly speaking. This year, the cooperatives are going to give us the opportunity to put into the light the contributions that these many farmers have contributed. And we're going to also be speaking about sustainability, which is something that worries our citizens. I'll tell you right off that the totality of all of the challenges before us really require a planetary solution, whether we're talking about the economy, the social situation. There's no partial solution, whether we're talking about Africa, Europe, or elsewhere. We have had some terrible turbulence on the earth, which have certainly communicated to us the idea that farming is always a struggle and always at the mercy of nature. This is the main worry and the main preoccupation in our policy. Obviously, there are three big challenges: demographic, environmental, and development. I'm not going to develop the theme of those three. Everybody knows what they are. But I'm going to talk about the cooperatives as work. We're trying to regenerate worldwide agricultural production. This is the future of the world economy that's at stake, including the capacity to feed the world in a sustainable way, the entire world. In other words, we're looking at the world in a long-term way. We're looking at the poorest people on Earth, and yet we want to effect these changes without putting the ecological aspects of the world in question. So that's the context. What is our contribution as a cooperative now? The form of the cooperative itself has a positive impact that's very powerful on economical and social development. Cooperatives, first of all, assures employment, but also assures a lot of indirect employment. Cooperatives, and this is the way I would define them, are those I'm talking about are in Europe. You must know that concerning employment, a country such as my own, France, 20% of industrial employment are of country environment. We're talking about 17% in Africa, so we're more or less working with the same percentages of population. The difficult environmental factors that we're all familiar with and that I mentioned is nothing new for farmers. That's what was really at the origin of cooperatives even a century ago in Europe. Farmers wanted to get together in order to confront their difficulties to be stronger in the markets. Certainly in Europe there's a lot of progress, but quite honestly we have not achieved our goals, and the place of farmers in the food chain is not a battle that we have really won. In fact, our position is weak. We haven't really achieved our goals. Farmers are still in a weak position, most especially with respect to distribution. One of our goals in the West is, as you know, there are 4 big distribution groups that are our interlocutors. We're talking about hundreds of millions of farmers, hundreds of thousands of farmers, and it's not easy to negotiate with them. However, cooperatives allow farmers to continue to develop their independence. And I think it's through this organization that is vital. It also allows them to create an entire network together with the urban areas that surround them and to seek the greatest number of formulas for their entry into the markets. We in Europe, we're trying to improve our economic situation. Kopak represents 30,000 cooperatives, representing 50% of agroalimentary businesses in Europe. There are 32 organizations in all in the European Union. Farmers' cooperatives have 7 million members and employ 79,000 people and represent 350 million euros in terms of income. Kopak, which I represent, is a big, wide fan, a big umbrella organization, fishing, raising of animals, cereals, everything is included. According to the last studies, the turnover of the 25 biggest cooperatives went up to 38% in the last decade and represents 30% of the worldwide turnover. The biggest European cooperatives go over 1 billion euros and, in fact, are approaching 2 billion. There are at least 30 in Europe that go well beyond the figures that I have just mentioned. And this includes all of the professions that can be included under farming. There are two kinds of cooperatives, the one in the northern Europe and one that's more Mediterranean or toward the south. The northern ones are certainly based on specialization in order to have a dominating position in the market and to also increase competition in general. Often they are involved in long-term strategies with a very simple objective: get to that critical mass which will allow them to develop synergies and to remain competitive at the same time. In Southern Europe, on the other hand, the productions are much more varied and adapted to life in the South, much more varied and also based on local markets. Overall, you can see that there's this difference in a general way between the North and the South. France, my country, is a little bit in the middle of those two extremes. But it's obvious that in Europe, in spite of the figures I've just given you, the level of confrontation among cooperatives hasn't been close enough to enable them to be really effective. Perhaps 2012 will be our opportunity to set up a certain number of events in order to encourage and to double our efforts to get people together and to get them to debate these various questions. I'd like to say as a conclusion that there's one point about markets with raw materials that I'd like to bring up. As cooperatives, obviously we are confronted by the problem of raw materials. Today, our markets are suffering from an evil, and I mean an evil, and that's the excessive volatility of markets, which disturbs them and very often ruins farmers. As we said, certainly if the price of corn goes up, that's fine, but then on the other hand, growers might be affected by bad crops. You have to be totally conscious of this, and often the growers are not the people who benefit from raising prices. In 2007, I told you I had been a farmer. I remember a time when I invested enormously in my farm, and due to various problems, what happened was that my entire business had to be shut down. Cogeca is pleading for an organization that will involve the main markets. If we talk about 5 or 6 main raw materials such as soy, rice, corn, you're talking now about 80% of the world's food. Yes, we can talk about animal products, but these cereals are the main things. So the volatility of the product of prices of these basic raw materials is just deadly for growers. There's a real battle to be led here in order to regulate the markets. I am co-founder of an organization called Montmadry, which pleads for this stabilization of prices, because the tools we have to measure prices, first of all, are very imperfect, and it's necessary to have some kind of an overall governance that will allow us to be able to provide products so that people can certainly eat everything that they need, but also that will stabilize the world.
Let me give the floor to our next presenter, Mr. Barriga, and appeal once again that we try to live within the 10 minutes. Thank you very much. You have the floor, Mr. Barriga.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to speak in English, not in French. And first, I would like to briefly introduce to you an idea of what GFAR is all about, because I am here as Vice Chair of the Global Forum on Agricultural Research. And I think that it's important for all of you to understand this organization. It represents 3 groups of different stakeholders. We have the public sector, the private sector, and some international organizations. It's a voluntary organization, and in the public sector, we congregate over 130 countries that participate through their national agricultural research institutes. And those will participate through regional fora that are constituted in every region of the world. We have one in America, in Africa, in Europe, in Asia. Those regional fora are going to be working with the national institutes as well as different stakeholders, the same we have in the global organization. In the private sector, we have 3 groups of stakeholders, which are the farmers, which are the most important, I would say, for the organization. Then we have the agribusiness and agro-processing, agroalimentary companies, and we also have the NGOs. And in the international organizations, we have FAO, IFAD, DFID, and the consortium of all the international agricultural research institutions. That diversity gives GFAR a unique possibility to integrate different needs in the world in relation to research. But we also find that research has to be projected into the transfer of technology, and it has to have an impact in production and productivity, and most of all, we have adopted the Millennium Development Goals in terms of the need to eliminate poverty, which is the foremost difficulty today in the world. In terms of food security, we see that food security from the production side is not a problem. Production has been increasing more than population, and the lack of food in many places that we saw a few years ago is mainly due to a problem of distribution and incomes, because people don't have the purchasing power to buy food. Therefore, poverty elimination is the foremost objective that we have to push, and in terms of increasing production and productivity of the farmers. GFAR is organizing a second global conference on agricultural research for development. We had one last year in Montpellier, and the next one is next year in Punta del Este in Uruguay. Now, going to the other topic that was assigned, I think that it is very important to consider that cooperatives represent, as Eve very well said, a business model with a conscience. I've been involved, in different cooperatives throughout my professional career, and I think that it is relevant to highlight the importance of associativity today. We need economies of scale. We need to meet quality conditions. The consumers are more sophisticated every time. Global markets are demanding different types of products. And on the other hand, the local markets are also upgrading their demands for the food that they want to consume. So therefore, the associativity is fundamental, and co-ops represent, the best option. On the other hand, they have an advantage in terms of being able to promote values in the society which are not commonly discussed of presently, as it was in the past. So, in the cooperatives, we have to stress the importance of partnerships. And partnerships can be done, with different types of organizations. And I have the experience of organizations and partnerships in Mexico and Chile and other places in America, in which the partnership will go through contract farming in helping small farmers get involved in the high-value production, as we have been doing in seed production, where we can share with the small farmer the new technologies and the use of the highest quality and the latest development seeds. The farmer will provide the land, will make the labor available, and the labor will be paid according to the wages that are local. And on the other hand, the company will provide, the basic seed, the plants, the technical assistance, which is going to be permanent in order to assure the quality that they have to obtain, and it will also be providing financing and marketing. This system of contract farming has been very positive in terms of eliminating or reducing very much the uncertainty of the farmer in terms of the market risk that they have when they plant. Because in the contract farming, they will know ahead of time which is going to be the price of the product they're going to get, which are going to be the quality requirements, and they will be advised permanently on how to produce to reach that system. I think, that it has proven very good. In Chile, we have several cases of vegetable seed production where we have been able to increase the income of the farmer by 6 to 7 times the normal income of a common crop. If you look at corn or wheat, which are the two basic crops in the country, vegetable seed production will have a net income for the farmer, which is going to be 6 or 7 times that of the commodity. Besides that, the family income also increases, because in that process, many members of the family can work and get a wage for it. It's not sort of a labor that is provided by the farmer without cost. No, it's paid by the operation of the cost. So that has been very successful. We had a similar case in Mexico where we were working with tobacco, and that went even beyond that, because we grouped people in units of about 60 to 80 hectares, each farmer owning 6 or 8 hectares. So we would make a group, and they would work jointly in order to mechanize and be able to improve the productivity and decrease costs. It was very successful. The first year when we started with the system, it was not easy to find converts to join the groups. But the second year, we had many applications to participate in that, and we ended up with about 1,500 groups of farmers working jointly in order to be able to perform much better. And cost in tobacco production decreased by about 40%, and the incomes for the farmers in terms of their quality had improved by about 60%. Besides that, since we had to irrigate in order to have better harvest, they had a second crop, which previously they didn't have. So this partnership is something that I feel can be of great help for that fundamental objective, improving the incomes of the farmers. And I think, that this is one of the ways that we have to go, and in which cooperatives have a major role and in organizing the farmers and working together and helping negotiate the best conditions for the farmers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Finally, I have Mr. Agawa, and you have the floor, sir. 10 minutes, please.
I am sharing with you the role of agricultural cooperatives in accessing input and output market, an overview of experience of Southern Regional Farmers Cooperative Federation of Ethiopia. To save time, I read from my note. First of all, may I take this opportunity to express my deepest gratitude for being given an opportunity to represent my fellow farmers and deliver their voice on this valuable conference. Even though it is boldly known to all of you, for the simple reason that I am representing the Farmers Cooperative Society, which is said to be contemporary, innovative means for collective action toward the realization, the benefit of smallholder producers in the persistently failing agriculture and food market, I believed that it would be proper if I begin by making a brief reminder what and why cooperatives. Cooperatives as economic enterprise and as self-help organization play a meaningful role in uplifting the socio-economic conditions of their members and their local communities. Over the years, cooperative enterprises have successfully operated locally owned people-centered business while also serving as catalysts for social organization and cohesion. With their concern for their members and communities, they represent a model of economic enterprise that place high regard for democratic and human values and respect for the environment. As the world today faces unstable financial systems, increased insecurity of food supply, growing inequality worldwide, rapid climate change, and increased environmental degradation, it is increasingly compelling to consider the model of economic enterprise that cooperatives offer. The cooperative sector, especially in developing countries like Ethiopia, also presents itself as an important element that can contribute to the realization of the Millennium Development Goals by 2015. Traditional cooperatives association existed in Ethiopia society centuries ago in the form of Ekub and Idr. Ekub is an association of people having common objective of mobilizing resources, especially finance, and distributing it to members on rotating basis. Idr is an association of people that have the objective of providing social and economic insurance for the members in the events of death, accident, damage to property, among others. In the case of funeral, Idr serves as funeral insurance, where community members elect their leaders, contribute resources, either kind or in cash, and support the mourning member. However, the history of formal cooperatives in Ethiopia dates back to 1960, when the first directive of cooperatives was enacted. Since the introduction of the Cooperative Directive, Ethiopia has enacted 4 new proclamations and an amendment act. Directive number 44/1960, Proclamation number 241/1966, Proclamation number 138/1978, Proclamation number 85/1995, Proclamation number 147/1998, and Amendment Act number 402 at 2004. The latest proclamation ensures that cooperative policy is fully consistent with universal cooperative principle and the ILO's promotion of cooperative recommendation. The Cooperative Proclamation number 147 identified clear goals and authorities which supported a more conducive legal environment for the formation of Ethiopian cooperatives. The goals include social, economic, and other motives that require joint action for attaining a common target. Aside from enacting Cooperative Proclamation, Ethiopia has formulated a 5-year cooperative development program. This demonstrates that the federal and regional government have realized the contribution of cooperative to economic and social development, food security, and poverty reduction in Ethiopia. Today, in Ethiopia, cooperatives play a crucial role in economic and social development. Cooperatives created approximately 82,000 jobs and generated approximately 500 million Ethiopian birr in wage during 2008. The participation of cooperatives in agro-processing, marketing, and finance, saving credit, and banking is increasing. The social role of cooperative is promoted through voicing of common goals, enhanced participation in value chains, and protection of producers from unfair pricing. Cooperative also create opportunity for networking and working in partnership with other agencies. As an important instrument for the implementation of the National Agriculture Development Policy and Strategy, as well as the recently launched Growth and Transformation GTP plan, currently agricultural cooperatives in Ethiopia are assumed to play a significant role of producers' organization that are mainly able to ensure the benefit of the member farming rural communities through effective value chain development and market linkage, like we do with WFP through P4P program. As per the Federal National Cooperative Promotion Directives, in Ethiopia there are 4 tiers of cooperative, namely primary cooperative, cooperative unions, cooperative federation, and cooperative confederation. In Ethiopia, the apex in many regional states is the cooperative union. However, as a result of motivation from the regional government to establish regional cooperative federations, the Southern Nationalities and People region established the first regional farmers cooperative federation in Ethiopia. Southern Region Farmers Cooperative Federation has been established and become functional in early 2009. The Regional Cooperative Federation focuses on major economic and social services that individual unions cannot effectively accomplish. The Southern Region Farmers Cooperative Federation has established with 13 member unions and working capital of Ethiopian 39.5 million farmers at village level. Currently, the Federation has the total membership of 18 cooperative unions, which in turn are having 474 affiliating primary cooperatives that are serving 311,000 individual farmers membership with total 1.8 million family members. As a collective business-making producers organization, the primary aim of the Federation in general is the betterment of the member farmers' access and role in the marketing of their produces, and effective supply and distribution modern input technologies to enhance production and productivity. Accordingly, since its establishment, the Federation has been exerting its coordination effort in linking unions to the market for better market price of grain and, more importantly, able to handle the importation of commercial fertilizers, covering the entire annual regional demand. In line with this, the Federation has performed the following input and output marketing operation during the past 3 years. Import and supply of chemical fertilizer raised from 28,000 tons at year 2008 to 110,000 tons in 2010 production year. Supply of improved seed by member unions increased from 2,800 tons at year 2008 to 95 tons by 2010. Supply of agrochemicals in year 2008 was 30% of total demand of the region covered by cooperative unions raised to 70% in 2010. Output marketing, grain, pulses, coffee marketed raised from 1,800 tons at year 2008 to 21,000 tons in 2010. With regard to output marketing, WFP has been buying large volume of food in Ethiopia from local market. Having WFP P4P program as committed buyer has been a greater opportunity in terms of improving the bargaining power position of members, and this guarantee their benefit from what they have produced. This has been mainly due to, firstly, the very nature of the program, as it has preferred to work directly with producers' organization so that able to cut the very long and inefficient chain, and secondly, the business volume made with the program has been quite significant. Finally, and most importantly, the program is designed in such a way that is motivating the market by realizing domestic purchase of grain that would have been imported as a relief or emergency support. No doubt that there is untapped potential that cooperatives as a producers' organization can form. The basis of enhancing market access and entrepreneurial skills through collective action. However, collective action in marketing requires closer coordination of production and post-harvest activities to ensure delivery of high quality and homogeneous product. In practice, the functionality of cooperative is constrained by shortage in skilled human resource, especially in cooperative business development. Moreover, the functionality of cooperative is also constrained by shortage of capital and limited access to credit. An effective and sustainable cooperative movement requires overcoming major credit constraints and strengthening capacity of administrators and management. If cooperatives are to be an innovative forms of organization, and market institutions are going to help reduce transaction costs and enhance market opportunity for the poor, there is a need to understand how such collective action evolves and how it is sustained. The determinants of farmer participation that enhance performance and effectiveness, and the government policy and complementary institution support and support from NGOs capacity building assistance are vital for the effectiveness of collective marketing action. However, such capacity building should aim at empowering cooperatives so that they can make key decisions and their operation with minimum or no external support. Finally, in the name of my organization, I am very much pleased with all business partnership and support we have received from WFP, P4P, hoping that we'll keep this partnership and to the possible higher level and diversity so that we can achieve our common goal of making better livelihood of our member producer and thereby reducing the deep-rooted rural poverty and food insecurity in the rural communities of Ethiopia. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I apologize for having to rush our presenters, but I thought we should have at least a little bit of time to have some interactive session. And with this, I would like to open the floor, but I do recognize that at the beginning I mentioned the presence of His Excellency, the Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Malawi. Given that they have done so well in agriculture, I don't know how cooperatives fit into that success story. So if he has a minute or two to share with us, I would give him the floor. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, my good friend Lazarus, and good afternoon to everybody. Indeed, I was not expecting to make an intervention, but what an opportunity to talk amongst friends, some of our country's great successes, and indeed I've learned quite a lot this afternoon. A lot of stuff fits in together. And the idea of cooperatives, the business organizations which are operated by a group of people for common interests and benefits. And more so, this is so relative, more so in our developing part of the world, particularly in Africa and in countries like mine where we've been very successful using this particular small, medium enterprises and also the cooperatives which we've talked about today. The interesting part is that these cooperatives really work because of women. You know, women are the backbone in Africa, anyway, for keeping cooperatives alive and keeping them really working strongly, mostly because they're trustworthy. The most important thing when you get a group of people together is to come up with a business concept and idea and trust each other that this will work out and we'll have common visions and common goals. So women are at the forefront of our cooperatives, particularly in Malawi. There's been a huge transition over the years. We had the Agriculture Development and Marketing Corporation, which was a cooperative run by corporate theories and strategies of profit making. Those did not really translate down to the people on the ground because they were more of a cooperative strategy looking at advancing and leveraging, and that works very well in the West. But in developing Africa, it's very rural and very rudimentary, and the exercise of having a half an acre by women with a hoe in their hand, a baby on the back, and producing millions of tons, that's commendable. You've got to think about that. In parts of the world with a mechanized agriculture society, they can't produce that. But Africans somehow manage to produce a substantial amount of crops with a hoe in the hand and a baby on the back with very little interventions from anyone else other than themselves. So that is the main ingredient for success in our part of the world, is the hard-working, strong commitment of African women. Also, the reason corporates are very successful in our parts of the world is because, as I said, women are trustworthy, and therefore they can raise capital. If they do get a cooperative working this year, they raise the infrastructure, the capital necessary, the farm inputs necessary, they're most guaranteed to pay back. The loss ratios are very, very minimal for women. And if you go with men, it's slightly a bit different. Also, they can secure good prices because they have the masses in producing the crops and secure good farm inputs. But they've also been able to spend time in learning good practices because they have the appetite for improving their farming techniques. So they've diversified from just the hoe to fish farming to other forms of agriculture. So our success has also been on the opportunity of creating the farm storage, where women have gone into metallic silos, where the post-harvest have been up to 40% losses. And since 2004, a country which was begging to feed 4 million people, we now are the breadbasket of the continent. World Food Program are buying a substantial amount of food from our country, as opposed in the past to import into our country $15 million per annum now they're buying. But ultimately, the success of our corporate programs in Malawi has been because of the Malawian women who are trustworthy, who have been able to absorb new agriculture skills, have been able to adopt into irrigation, and ultimately pay back the loans and raise capital for the next year. Because it's easy to raise this year, but if you eat all the investment this year because of poor management and loss of vision and ideologies, the next year you'll not be able to have that cooperative working as a bond, as a unit. So the payback, the integrity, the hard work has been the success of Malawi's. Of course, the government has had to put in the enabling environment, government has to put in the infrastructure, but all that's said and done, someone has to still do the work. So it all comes back down to hard work, to the hard-working African women who's feeding, we got just slightly under 1 billion on the continent. So it's the African woman that's feeding the continent, and hopefully in years to come they'll be feeding a bigger part of the world as they learn more and more skills. I thank you very much for your attention.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. I think the gender dimension to this discussion is very important, which you have brought in. And I hope that as we interact, there will be a greater commitment from governments to support women, farmers, women entrepreneurs, and share the success stories that you have mentioned. I also learned that we do have a high-level representative from Mongolia who has traveled, and with your permission, let me give the floor to our representative from Mongolia. You have the floor.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all of delegates. And I'm happy to introduce about Mongolian cooperatives movement on behalf of the Mongolian delegates. Well, my introduction will consist of 3 parts. And first of the Mongolian National Cooperatives Association, and the next one will be Mongolian National Agricultural Cooperatives Association, and the latest one is where I work in the primary level. It's the in case of the countryside. Well, Mongolian National Cooperators Association, it based on their solutions and the recommendations of the National Cooperators Assembly, First Assembly, 2007. MNC, the Mongolian National Cooperators Association, has established in 2007 in order to provide leadership, the focus efforts of the cooperatives and its stakeholders for sustainable development of the national cooperative movement. Therefore, the following cooperative non-government organization initiated to establish the MNCA, which all operate as a nationwide. The Central Union of Mongolian Consumers Cooperatives, Central Union of the Mongolian Industrial Cooperatives, well as National Association of Mongolian Agricultural Cooperatives, NAMAC, Union of the Mongolian Production and Service Cooperatives, also the Mongolian Confederation of the Credit Cooperatives. Well, next one is Mongolian, the National Agricultural Cooperatives, National Association of the Mongolian Agricultural Cooperatives is also the NGO which was reorganized by First Assembly January of the 1992. The Supreme Council of the Agricultural Cooperatives, the precursor of the NAMAC, was founded actually in 1967 and played a significant role in increasing agricultural production efficiency, improving the living standard of the rural population, and developing the educational and cultural welfare. Well, just the brief introduction of the Mongolian National Cooperators Association and the National Agricultural Cooperatives Association. So, well, now I will introduce about how's going in the countryside, the primary level. I just worked in the countryside and the primary level. So, on a provincial level, our province has the 14 districts, and each district has the agricultural cooperatives. And
just excuse me a little bit. In the interest of time, could you just summarize maybe the highlights of your experiences in Mongolia, so that we can have more people to speak? Yes, just about 1 or 2 minutes.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, main activity of our agricultural cooperatives association is the meat processing and also cashmere processing, and we are exported to Kashmir, we exported to China, and meat, and we exported to Russia. But actually, it's the two main products is our main income from those production. And last few years, we had a big problem in the countryside because my province located in the Gobi Desert, where the lack of the water and last few years we had no rain. That's why it's difficult for the meat processing section. Also, the Kashmir also had some problem, and also in the countryside, the cooperatives movement is not so going well. Not so. The reason of the problems is the lack of the educated human resource, also the lack of the support, local government support, also the influence from the climate changing, also influence the animals' disease. Those are the 4 problems we had. Okay, just a brief introduction about the house going in the countryside, primary level situation. Just, okay.
Thank you very much. I would like, when I give you the floor, to introduce yourself, because we do not have the name tags for everyone. But I do recognize Mr. Jack Wilkinson, and I give you the floor. Please try to be as brief as you can. Thank you.
To the group is what do we want out of this process for the next year? It's great that FAO and IFAD, IFPRI, the World Food Program, maybe World Bank are going to get together. But how do we change the future? I mean, UN normally is kind of considered a talk shop where everybody comes and talks about what a wonderful situation things are at home and how extensive their co-ops are at alleviating poverty. And that's good to know and to share amongst each other. And I'm not trying to be trite about it. But we still are only 1/10 of the U.S. economy. It's not like we're controlling the world here. We have a lot to gain and a lot to do, and it would be really wonderful to put a package of events together that really are going to change the future. And I think that if we can stimulate activity amongst all of our international donor organizations as to how they're going to support co-op development, what are the lessons learned, what do we really need to improve our probability of success, and how can we expand that into other sectors, we might come out of this year of the co-op with a real program that really will fundamentally change the future. And I would really like to challenge the group to think in that way and see what we can do. I'm sitting on the committee, the advisory committee at the UN. We meet tomorrow, and that's what I'm going to ask out of the UN. I mean, how can we take something out of this year that is really going to stimulate the movement and really re-energize it? And then what tools do they need made available to them so that when they are stimulated, we're going to change the probability of success into the future? As the gentleman from Malawi said, I've been there. It's wonderful what's happened there. It's fun. It's really great the partnership developed. Can we replicate that in different cultures, in different countries, so that in 10 years from now it's a totally different world? Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. And as a complementary question, I was expecting that our panelists will also answer what type of assistance do they need from governments, and that is to complement your question. Any other question? We'll take a round of questions before I ask the presenters to speak. Yes, sir, you have the floor.
Many interesting presentations were made by the presenters there. But there are certain open questions for me. Researcher in the University of Helsinki, Finland. I'm an agronomist by education. Now, as I said, the presenters have made very many good points in connection with the main topic, that is agricultural cooperatives as a means to achieving food security. But there are certain things that are missing here. That is the problems, especially connected with small holders or small-scale farmers. Now, my first question will go to Dr. Yves Crowley. That is about the effects of climate change. You see, according to the prognosis of IPCC, there is a danger that by 2080, about 380 up to 100 million people will be suffering from severe hunger. And this refers then to small-scale farmers, actually, in sub-Saharan Africa. This is what it is. Now, again, the gentleman from, was it from Burkina Faso or from Malawi? Gentleman. Yeah, as you see, the president of one of the biggest cash crops in Africa, cotton. You know, the problem there are problems with the crop and cash crop distribution income distribution in Africa. And that by itself makes a real problem because these cash crops are actually produced by the small-scale farmers as a portfolio. But the income that these people get is almost none. So something through cooperatives should be improved once we believe that the cooperatives are a solution. Now, my friend from Ethiopia, as a matter of fact, brought a solution when he talked about the informal types of cooperative associations, which are actually community-rooted co-ops that are not yet recognized by governments, that are not registered, but they are very much connected with those people who really suffer from all dangers, like the small-scale farmers. That is, I think, a model I consider to be developed in 2012. That is one. That's my answer to Jack here.
Thank you very much. I thought you would be asking questions, so since you have also provided the answers. Okay. Very good. Do I have any other requests for the floor? Yes, ma'am. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. Just quickly, my name is Xenia von Leer, and I'm representing the IFAD, International Fund for Agricultural Development here in New York. I want to thank all the participants and excellent panelists for their great statements and very illustrative of obviously the power of cooperatives in reducing poverty, increasing food security, but more than that, really improving livelihoods and well-being around the world. Thank you to FAO for taking the lead in coordinating this event together with us and WFP. I just have a very, very quick question, and that is as probably many of you know, and obviously in the UN context, there's a whole process going on that will culminate in the Rio +20 summit meeting of next year. And within that context, one discussion that is taking place is in the way of what is the role of agriculture and agriculture in the future. And some of the keywords that are discussed in this context are things like doubly green agriculture or sustainable intensification of agriculture, evergreen agriculture. Maybe no one has really settled on a term yet, but there's obviously a sense of that agriculture itself somehow needs to change. On the one hand, agriculture needs to feed more people going forward, but at the same time, it needs to do so without taking more from the natural environment than really the world can sustain. And I was wondering if maybe some of you or one of you can talk a little bit about of good examples where cooperatives have been maybe leading the way in kind of more of a more sustainable way of agricultural production, or what is going to be the discussion within cooperatives of their role in kind of fostering, or what's the future, how they see where agriculture is going, over the next 10, 20 years. Thank you very much.
Any further questions? I see none. Unless my eyes are deceiving me, I'll put on my glasses. I don't see any request for the floor, so let me yield the floor back to the panelists for them to answer the range of questions that have been asked. I don't know who would like to go first, but perhaps Mr. Traore. Thank you.
Merci. Je pense que
Thank you. I think that the first question is, what can we do? What do we recommend for this campaign? You know, while listening to what everybody says, we know that agriculture, until the contrary, it always fed mankind. And the trend is that the economy would be managed by the go-betweens and that they would be present at the negotiations. What we wish to see is that to put back agriculture at the forefront of the globalization movement. And I would like to address one of the questions that was raised, as while we feed mankind, we can work to preserve the environment. But it has a cost. This double task to feed mankind and to protect and nurture the environment, it has a cost. And so we need, at the policy level, at the world level, we have to redirect the financing toward agriculture. You know, Bretton Woods institutions, at some point, they were working against that at some point. And 10 years later, they realized that they were working in the wrong direction. It was hard to repair that. So I think that we will have to redirect the economy toward agriculture, and the cooperatives have a very important role to play, because cooperatives can really allow the producers to define a philosophy of the environment that allows them to stay on the land. When we talk about the environment, we live in that environment. We want to preserve it. We want to think of future generations. And I would like to answer one of the questions regarding the water. It's true that climate change, some decisions were made to reduce the effects of pollution, atmospheric pollution, but I think we have to work on water, and in particular in Africa, surface water and underground water are not used to their capacity and not well used, and so we have a very important task there in order to redirect the investments and financing in that area, and water can help us to preserve the environment and also to protect this population in that particular environment. Somebody mentioned cotton here. You know, for those who know me, I think Wilkinson, maybe he left, he knows me well. And I raised that question. It was a big debate. But, you know, in the history of cotton, we produced cotton, we didn't transform it in Africa. That was a big evil. One of the propositions I wanted to present was that in order to preserve cotton is to transform, to manufacture the cotton there. So it's you have to do. You need energy to do that. You need a certain policy to do that. It could be the future of Africa, but I think that our struggle at the World Trade Organization, the politicians didn't follow the debate. The debate stopped at a certain point, and so it didn't have a result. So the share of African cotton diminished on the global market. Merci.
Next few minutes, so let me just give to the other presenters 1 minute to try and respond. I'm so sorry. Yes, Mr. Pace.
Oui, il y a eu beaucoup de questions, donc
Many questions were raised here, so I cannot answer all of them. Miss or Mrs., I don't know. Regarding sustainable agriculture, we all agree that we have to produce more and better. Now, you wanted to hear some cases. I can tell you that in France, the totality of cooperatives, we have started processes to change our agricultural practices, to save water, to use less intrants, to limit the production. But we have to do that without a downgrading of productivity, and that's very important. So one has to rely on science, on agronomy, but in order to produce more and better. But there is such a movement. It has started. And then I would like to add something very simple. The stakes in terms of food are very important. So in order for producers to produce and continue their trend, they need to have a certain vision and to have a certain visibility. I am a producer, but if I don't have a certain visibility, if I don't quite know what I'm going to do, then I'm not going to invest. And that's also the role of governments. I talked in my presentation of the organization of big agricultural markets. We are at the core of a big problem. Do we let the markets self-manage themselves, or do we give visibility to producers? It's true for developing countries, producers in developing countries and in the so-called rich countries. We are on the same boat. So I'm waiting for the government. I expect the government to have certain policies to grant visibility to producers. You don't program agriculture the way you make tools or screws or cars. There are all kinds of variations because there's climate change, there are diseases. So I expect from the European governments, but also for such an organization as we have here, to tackle with these issues. Food, agriculture is really important, and food, and if we let just things go by themselves, then it's a very big danger. 15 minutes regarding cooperatives. Cooperative, it's a wonderful enterprise because it's working for mankind. It's not anonymous people, it's not capitals, it's real people. And I think that's something that we have really to cultivate. I am very optimistic regarding the cooperative model. There's a lot of turmoil in the world. I'm coming from Europe. You know, there's a crisis, existential crisis. People are wondering about the euros. Is everything going to crumble? But the cooperatives, they give a certain meaning to the economy. So I hope that the government support the cooperatives and the economy will really have a real meaning. Merci, monsieur. Merci, monsieur.
Capture more people to understand what agriculture is and the projection of agriculture, which as an agribusiness system is creating much more value, giving much more employment, and contributing in a much larger way to the GNP of the countries. Agriculture as such is measured today in a figure that is not reflecting the reality of what agriculture in total is aggregating to the country. But the main problem that we're going to be facing in a few years is what is going to happen given that aging is coming into the farm side. If you look into the different countries, you see that there are no young people in the farms, that people are aging, and that young people are not interested in agriculture. So something has to be done. And definitely, you know, the economies of scale are going to be creating the need for associations, and cooperatives have a major role on that. And I would like to finish, if I may, just reading in the document A66 prepared by United Nations as a support to the Year for Agriculture. They make several recommendations. But I think that it's very fundamental that if we're going to improve and to emphasize the cooperatives as a future, we have to consider focus support on cooperatives as sustainable and successful business enterprises that contribute directly to employment generation, poverty reduction, and social protection across a variety of economic sectors in urban and rural areas. Cooperatives are business ventures that have to be successful.
Thank you very much. In order to bring in the young people, perhaps we should have an iPod application in cooperatives. Finally, Mr. Agao.
If they earn money, in agriculture, they will join.
Yeah.
But if they're going to go and stay in the farm, to be poor, they're not going to stay.
Thank you.
They're very clever.
Mr. Agao, 1 minute.
Okay, thank you. In Ethiopia, there is no aging problem. The problem we face is financial source for cooperatives, because most of banks need collateral, that is fixed asset. There is no fixed asset. Also, especially primary cooperatives are led by farmers, which is even we do not have bookkeeping knowledge. Because of that, there is a need of training, there is a need of financial source. Therefore, cooperatives needs attention of development organization and government attention at this time in case of our country.
Thank you very much. And finally, Eve Crowley. 1 minute.
Okay. I won't answer the question on climate change. I'd be happy to talk about it afterwards. The thing that I wanted to address was the point that Jack Wilkinson made. What do we want out of this year? Number one, better data. What is the contribution of agricultural cooperatives to the economy and to development? Number two, Stimulating networking and lesson learning across cooperatives in different parts of the world. We already have lots of good practices out there. We heard about a few here. We need to upscale them. We need to enable people in different parts of the world to utilize them and adapt them to their different contexts. This is a unique opportunity to do that. And the Good Practices publication that FAO is releasing this year, together with IFAD and WFP, provides some examples of how to do that. Thirdly, clarifying what the lessons are that cooperatives want to get out to policymakers. What are the changes in policies that are going to enable cooperatives to form, to proliferate, to grow, to expand, and to have the kind of impact they can have on their members and on their economies? And in this context, stimulating environments in which cooperatives and governments can talk together through a participatory fora in each country that's committed to this is an important first step. And that was all I wanted to say.
Thank you very much, Eve. Let me close this session of the panel by thanking all of you for coming, and especially our panelists, Monsieur Barriga, Monsieur Pays, Mr. Traore, Eve, Mr. Agao, and our delegate from Mongolia, the permanent representative of Malawi, and indeed everyone who has so actively participated. In the time that we had available, it may not have been possible to exhaust all the questions that we had, to provide all the information, and to provide all the best cases that would otherwise have been presented if we had more time. But this was intended to stimulate discussion, to stimulate thinking, and it's a first move. I hope we will have occasion to perhaps go deeper into the discussions of this very, very important subject. So I thank all of you for coming, and I thank our organizers, FAO and IFAD and others, for this event. Thank you very much.